We are back. John chapter 9, as we go through the New Testament. We've only got John and the book of Luke left, and we'll have done the entire New Testament since we started our Safe Harbor. All of those videos are up available for you. If you do not get our newsletter, and most of you don't, we only send it out to just over 1,000 people. But if you'd like to get it, just write info@oursafeharbor.com and we'll put you on the list. It's just one time a week. We don't bomb your email. But if you don't get the newsletter, you might not know how to find all the videos. Trying to search for them on YouTube is brutal because YouTube just has a really terrible engine of how to search things. So go to Vimeo, Vimeo.com. You don't need an account, don't need to worry about any of that sort of thing. Nothing in there of ours cost a penny. And all of our videos, even a couple that got kicked from YouTube because they didn't like the content, those are on Vimeo. And they're actually a little bit higher quality videos, and they're there for free. So just go to Vimeo.com, look up oursafeharbor.com, put in, let's say you have a question about 1 Corinthians 11. Put that in, see what comes up. You have a question about what we say about hell or heaven or anything, put it in. And there are well over 1,000 videos up there. I forget how many there are now, but it is well over 1,000 videos. And they're all free. And if they're sermons, they even have the notes attached in the description box. So you can look for all that we've done. So if you're teaching a Bible class at your church or a house church or men's group or women's group, and let's say you're doing the book of, and it's one of the New Testament books, you can go and listen to everything we've said about it. It's nice to have that kind of information available. John 9. As he went along, this is after the big combative scenes in John chapter 8 between Jesus and the religious elite. As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked, "Rabbi, who sinned? This man or his parents that he was born blind?" The Jews, as most people still do, if we're very honest, have this idea that all suffering was caused by sin, and that the sins of the fathers could be passed on to the children. The sins of the children could reflect back on the fathers. So, these questions were alive questions to them. Read the book of Job, where they see all of this suffering and they say, well, you have to have sinned because look at the suffering. We tend to do that too. Those of us who have moderate health, my health is not great anymore after last year and 3 hospital runs, but those of us who have moderate health are used to taking some medicine, getting better for a while, doing all right. And then we see people who are always sick. I wonder, what are they doing wrong? I can remember there was a period of my life where I had been damaged a bit and was hurt. And people would come up to me all the time. You should be taking this. You should be eating this. You should be doing this. It was all the time they had a reason I was suffering. And I understand why. We don't want suffering to be random because that means it can happen to us. We want it to have a cause. We want it to, all right, don't do this. This doesn't happen. There are a lot of things we can do that with. Don't play in the street. Don't get hit by a car. We can do that. Don't jump into the deep end of the pool unless you know exactly how to swim and get out of that pool. We understand that sort of thing. But whenever a child gets cancer, or whenever a child is born blind, or whenever a parent suddenly is killed in a car crash, and nobody was drinking, nobody was texting, a tire blew, a driver lost control, no fault of their own, that randomness really gets to us. And so the disciples are not being mean or cruel. They have a legitimate question. All right, what's the cause of this? Did the man sin? Seems like a crazy question. But they weren't really exactly sure of where we were before we were born. Therefore, they had to ask the question. And also, with their concept of time, it could be, did God know he was going to be a sinner, therefore God shut him down with blindness? Or did his parents sin and this is the punishment? Jesus said, neither this man nor his parents sinned. Now, first of all, we know technically they did, because human beings sin. We are clear on that, are we? Yes? So when Jesus says they haven't sinned, what is he talking about? They're forgiven. They're faithful Jews. They're part of the religious community. So we do sin, but we're forgiven. So sin was not the cause of this. But this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. As long as it's day, we must do the work of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. While I'm in the world, I am the light of the world. A little choppy, like we said last week, but it's because it's a condensation of what was said over a longer period of time. Jesus is explaining to them a couple of things. One, sin is not what caused this, but there's some things I can do about it, and I should do them because I'm only going to be here for a while. And whenever your time is limited, time becomes far more valuable. Therefore, I need to get on this. I'll deal with this now. Do you ever have to pep talk yourself? We're running out of daylight here. How much time do we have left? We got to get this work done. Jesus is saying that here. And he knows the firestorm that's going to come. He just came out of a firestorm. And there's going to be another one coming. This is going to be a very strange one. You ready? Here we go. Having said some of this, he spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. Why? Why? I've actually read commentaries where people are trying to say, well, the reason why is, and I'm reading it going, what? It's okay to say we don't know. I have an idea, but I'm only going to share the idea if we all agree that we understand this is Patrick's idea. This is not scripture. This is not God speaking from heaven. Can we all agree? We good? Good? There in the back? Yep. Okay. Here we are. I think Jesus wanted to create some distance between him and this man so that when the miracle occurred, he wasn't there. And the reason I get that idea is because how many times did Jesus do that? He would heal somebody and say, don't tell anyone. And what was the next verse? More than half the time, they told everyone. He would say, or he would raise the daughter of a man and then from the dead, and then just slip out quietly saying, you don't need to tell people about this. He always tried to do things without bringing the big glory to himself. When he did miracles, it was to bring glory to God and to underline the fact that he was the Son of God and speaking for God. So I think he's just trying to create some physical distance. If you remember, there we go again, Bradford Pears. Chapter 8, verse 59, they're picking up stones to kill him. Chapter 9 starts, as he went along, there are people still out there gunning for him, stoning for him, rocking for him. They're after him. So he's creating a little bit of distance. Go, wash in the pool of Siloam. So the men went and washed and came home seeing. Well, that's a good day. That's an amazing day. Great story. Oh, we're not done. His neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging asked, isn't this the same guy who used to sit and beg? Some claimed that he was. Others said, no, he only looks like him. But he himself insisted, I am the man. I'm loving the story already. It cracks me up every time I read this. He comes home seeing, and their neighbor's going, we've been giving alms to this guy. It's kind of like Eddie Murphy and Trading Places, a long time ago movie, where he claims to be a disabled vet. All of a sudden he isn't. We've been feeding this guy, giving alms, and now he's walking around. What? And other people going, no, that can't be. Must just look like him. We're like that in human nature. Some notice, and some say, it's too painful to notice, therefore I shall not notice. And he's over there going, no, it's me, guys. It's really me. How then were your eyes open? They demanded. And that really is a good translation. And it shouldn't be they asked. They queried gently. It was like, well, you're seeing now, dude. There wasn't a strict Aramaic equivalent to you're seeing now, dude, but you get the point. He replied, the man they called Jesus made some mud and put it on my eyes. He told me to go to Siloam and wash, so I went and washed, and then I could see. Well, I guess that story checks out. It makes complete sense to me. Well, it does to me because I know who Jesus is and I'm a Christian. These people had heard about Jesus. Maybe even some of them had seen him or heard him say some things, but this is all very new. I got to ask you, would you have bought this story? Oh, he put mud on your eyes. Now you can see. So, confusion, doubt. There is some wonder, I'm sure. Where is this man? They ask him. I don't know. You know why? He never saw him. He was blind. He's like, all right, where can we find this guy? I just got my eyes back. He sent me away. Then I could see when I was away. So again, it's a great story. And we're not done. Because the religious authorities, the elders, bishops, pastors, leaders of the faithful people, need to look into this. They brought to the Pharisees the man who'd been blind. All right, we're going to sort this out. Now, why would they bring him? We can come up with different answers here. One of the more obvious is he guilty of fraud? Having been fake begging since birth. That would have been some consistent act in a land of zero privacy, because they did not have privacy. Things, mainly life was outside. Inside was very simple, very stark. Houses were joined together. Alleys were just a couple of feet wide, and windows were placed, uncovered windows. People saw and heard everything. But maybe they're thinking fraud, or maybe they're thinking there's a work of God among us. Dear leaders, you need to know that there's a work of God among us. So they brought him. Now, on the day on which Jesus had made the mud and opened the man's eyes was a dun, 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 Sabbath. Oh. Therefore, the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He put mud on my eyes, the man replied, and I washed, and now I see. Very consistent story. Some of the Pharisees said, this man's not from God because he does not keep the Sabbath. Did you hear that? He brings healing to a man, but he didn't do it according to the way we interpret the law that God gave about Sabbath. Now, Jesus has gone up against this repeatedly. Sabbath was meant to be a day of rest, not a day that's a burden, where you weren't allowed to walk more than about 1 kilometer from your house, where that was considered work, where you weren't allowed to make food for your family because that's work. You weren't allowed to do anything good because that was work. So you had to sit and contemplate, and that was your Sabbath. Sabbath is meant to be rest. For some of us, Sabbath is some time on the golf course or a walk in the park or sitting with a good book on the back deck. It could be quietly, it could be going on a date with your wife. It is a break from work, a reset of your body, mind, and spirit. But they had turned it into anything you do, we're going to call work, and therefore it's a sin. They had taken something good and made it a burden. It's kind of like prayer. Once you see how easy this is, I think, could we all agree that it'd be a really good idea to start your day with prayer? It's a really good idea. Let's make it a law. If you don't say prayers before you leave your bedroom in the morning, then you're not really a good Christian. And really the prayer needs to be sincere and from the heart, so it's going to have to be a certain length. None of this reverse of now I lay me down to sleep stuff, now I get me out of bed. No, it's going to have to be a little bit more substantial. You see what happens? We start making more and more and more rules, and now people are going, I got to do all of this. I feel guilty if I don't do this. And that's what they've done to the Sabbath times 1,000,000. That's exaggeration. I don't think they did 1,000,000. Others, when the Pharisees goes, well, this guy can't be from God because he was working on the Sabbath, for goodness sake. Others ask, well, how can a sinner do such miraculous signs? So they were divided, having a good old argument about this now. Finally, they turned again to the blind man. What do you have to say about him? It was your eyes he opened. The man said, he's a prophet. Now, when we say prophet and prophecy in modern American English, or really in the West, most people think you're talking about somebody that tells the future. But prophets didn't spend most of their time talking about the future. I've seen different figures, but I think it's safe to say about 20-25% of the time, if you do word count, they were talking about future events. But most of the time, they were not foretelling the future. They were telling the people about God and about life and about right. And so what he's saying here really is, I think he's a good guy. I can see. I think he belongs to God, and this is a gift from God. The Jews still did not believe that he'd been born blind. Well, that can't be it. You had to have been. So they sent for his parents. Is this your son? They asked. Is this the one you say was born blind? How is it that now he can see? We're going to have a little religious trial here. You ever been caught in one of those? Those are fun, aren't they? He said mockingly. They are not fun. And the religious trial leaders are always convinced they're the ones who have the right to put everybody else on trial. I'm going to write them up. I have so many of these examples. I can remember a man that was very big in a religious tribe in which I lived, had all kinds of books on morality and against sexual sin and the sins of abortion and this, that, and the other. And then one day, his wife got sick, went to the hospital, and she found out she had sexually transmitted diseases. Well, she'd only been with her husband. Well, the husband, going around doing all of these meetings, this is pre-internet, guys, and way back then, people got away with a lot more. He had been going around doing these meetings, and they were always thunder and power and accusation, and people ate that up. They brought it in. Sometimes he would have his wife with him, except it wasn't his wife. It was one of various women that he had around the country, and he would claim they were his wife, and nobody knew. Well, he got busted, and he was even a leader of a school of ministry and preaching. He got busted, divorced, kicked out, disappeared for a while. We all thought, well, hope he heals, hope he comes back to God, hope his family's going to be okay, but we let it go. A few years later, he had started another church in the other corner of the country and started immediately a monthly publication and an email thing attacking preachers and churches for being liberal. Never repented. You know why? He didn't think he needed to. He was the good guy. He was the religious leader. He knew what sin and error was. He was going to point it out in others. I think it's great to point out sin and error in yourself. But maybe I've strayed a little bit here, but you get the point. How can you do this? We cannot believe that this good could be done from a sinner, and he has to be a sinner because he broke our rules about Sabbath. They're saying, we know this is our son. We know he's born blind, but how he can see now or who opened his eyes, we don't know. Ask him. He's of age. He'll speak for himself. Not profile and courage here. In fact, the next verse says, his parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews. For already the Jews had decided that anyone who acknowledged that Jesus was the Christ would be put out of the synagogue. That's why his parents said, he's of age, ask him. Those people who own the keys to the church building have power, don't they? They can break your community. They can murder you with their mouth and their decisions. And that's what's going on here. One of the very big differences between our safe harbor and standard brick and mortar churches is we'll never do that to you. You're always welcome here. No matter what you've done, no matter what sins you're struggling against, no matter if you agree with us on everything or not, you're always welcome here. We'll never put you out. We'll never call you out. We will instead call you and ask how we can love you better, what more we can do for you. But we're not going to call you and say we're disappointed in you. We're not going to, no. We want our arms to be as open and wide as Jesus' arms. And those are pretty wide open arms, people. But the leaders of churches often believe they've got the keys to the kingdom of heaven. But they do have the keys to the church building and the keys to who gets to do what. And they sort it out in a way that always seems to work for them. Now, that's a big slander because a lot of church leaders are super good, humble, kind people. But we've all, I think most of us in our safe harbor have experienced the other kind too. And there's a reason why they show up so often in the Gospels, because they show up often in human organizations. The second time, they summoned the man who'd been born blind. Give glory to God, they said. That is, all right, you got to go back to Joshua 7 and verse 19. Give glory to God is a charge to tell the truth. That's what that means. It doesn't mean that he's supposed to now sing a hymn or something. It means give glory to God. In other words, you are under oath to tell the truth. Joshua 7:19, if you want to check that out. All right. Okay. We know this man is a sinner. How do you know? Because he broke the rules of the Sabbath. Whose rules? God's rules. Can you find that in Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy? No, he said to rest and not to do work. You think spitting, making little mud patties for the eyes is working? That seem like work to you? Whenever kids are out back, you remember in the old days, kids would, they'd play in the mud and make shapes out of the mud, and people called them mud pies. Did you ever go up to the kids and say, kids, you got to quit working and start playing? You know, these men had made rules, and therefore when the rules were broken, these people are sinners. It wasn't God's rules. We really need to learn to discern between the two. The man who'd been blind replied, whether he's a sinner or not, I don't know. One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see. I like that answer. They then asked him, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? He answered, I've told you already and you didn't listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too? Okay. Maybe the last phrase wasn't the right phrase to use. We tend to do that. Jesus warned us. He said, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything else after that can come from the evil one. So he was doing real good. I've already told you, you didn't listen. Why should I say it again? Stop. But he said one extra sentence. Did anybody else feel common ground with this fella? We often say one too many sentences, sometimes more than one. They hurled insults at him and said, you are this fellow's disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but as for this fellow, we don't even know where he comes from. My old religious tribe was a very, very tight one. And I can remember, even as a teenager, I'd be reading a book on history or religious history or something, just I got from the library. My father would look at, what are you reading? I'd tell him, is that written by a member of the church? Don't think so. Then why are you wasting your time? Where did this person even come from? If they knew what they were talking about, they'd be one of us. That's exactly this attitude. By the way, I had the same attitude because I've been taught it. It's been a long journey out of there. I don't think I'm done with the journey yet. Don't think you are either. You wouldn't be listening to this. The man answered, now, that is remarkable. You don't know where he comes from. You're the religious leaders. You're overseeing all this stuff. And you don't even know where the guy comes from. And he's the guy that could open my eyes. You couldn't open my eyes. You knew me then. You weren't opening my eyes. He opened my eyes. And you don't know where he came from. That's interesting. We know that God does not listen to sinners. He listens to godly men who do his will. Nobody has ever heard of opening the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he couldn't do anything. That makes a lot of sense. Does that make sense to you? That makes sense to me. They were so bound by their God in a box that had to behave exactly like they wanted because they put these rules in place. To this they replied, you were steeped in sin at birth. That's a remarkable achievement. How dare you lecture us? We are the leaders. We are the wise people. And they threw him out. To be thrown out of the synagogue is to be thrown out of the community. Most people would no longer do business with you. They would not eat with you. Your fellowship was broken. It was a very serious thing to happen. Jesus heard that they'd thrown him out, and when he'd found him, in other words, Jesus heard about this, went looking for the guy. When he found him, he said, do you believe in the Son of Man? Who is he, sir? The man asked. Tell me, so I may believe in him. You've now seen him. In fact, he's the one speaking with you. Son of Man seems odd to us, a phrase. But again, if you will listen to the sermons that we delivered on March 30th and April 6th, you will see that the phrase Son of Man is used often in the psalm to refer to Jesus. And so he is, whenever he says Son of Man, this guy's thinking of all those psalms that talk about a deliverer, a healer, the messenger of God, all of this. Because you've now seen him. In fact, he's the one speaking to you. Then the man said, Lord, I believe, and he worshiped him. Jesus said, for judgment I've come into this world, so that the blind will see, and those that can see will become blind. The religious leaders are blind. And Jesus' coming has shown their blindness. Some Pharisees who were with him heard him say this and asked, what, are we blind too? Jesus basically says, you should be so lucky. He says, if you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty of sin. But now that you claim you can see, your guilt remains. It's a word play. Remember how the chapter started. Did this man sin or his parents? What caused the blindness? Jesus here is saying the blindness is being caused by yourself. If you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty of sin. That answers that first question. But now that you claim you can see, your guilt remains because of what you say you see and what you will not see. He then goes into a lesson, but we've exceeded our time, or about to exceed our time for this week. We try to keep these around 30 minutes. So I'm going to stop and we'll do the lesson next week. All right? Hopefully the Bradford peers will be away and will be a little bit stronger of voice. Thank you for putting up with me. Thank you for your support, your love, the notes of encouragement, the emails. Thank you for those of you that support us financially. You literally feed us. You literally buy our medicine when we're sick. It is amazing. We are humbled and honored and always grateful. God bless you. We'll talk to you next week.